This story was sent in by a long-haul trucker named Tyler, who's been driving cross-country for over 15 years. But there's one night he still can't shake from his memory. I was hauling a shipment from Columbus to Parkersburg, a route I'd done dozens of times before. It was late September, around 2:30 in the morning. The roads were nearly empty, and thick fog had settled in over Route 33, just outside Athens, Ohio. Visibility was maybe 20 feet in front of me. I had the radio off, just the hum of the engine and the occasional squeak of my wipers for company. Then I saw her, a figure just off the shoulder of the road, a woman standing in the ditch, wearing a white dress, soaked, barefoot, her arm raised slightly like she was waving or reaching for help. I slowed down, pulled onto the shoulder, and turned on my hazards. But when I looked back in the mirror, she was gone. I opened my door, stepped out into the fog with a flashlight. "Hello?" I called. Silence. I walked a few steps toward where she'd been standing. Just muddy grass and empty road. Maybe I imagined it. I got back into the truck and kept driving. Not even 5 minutes later, I caught something in my rearview mirror. My heart just about stopped. She was there, on my trailer, just sitting on the edge, facing away from me. I slammed the brakes, hazards back on, jumped out again and ran to the back. Nothing. Completely empty. That's when I realized my trailer doors were still locked, sealed. There's no way she could have gotten up there. And yet I saw her, clear as day. I told a guy at the next truck stop what I'd seen. Older driver, probably in his 60s. When I mentioned the road near Athens, he looked at me real serious. Said there's a local legend about a woman who was hit and killed by a drunk driver on that exact stretch back in the 80s. They say she still tries to flag down passing vehicles, looking for someone who will actually stop and help. I haven't seen her since, but every time I drive that route, I make sure to keep my eyes on the road, and I don't stop for anyone, not anymore. This story comes from a trucker who asked to stay anonymous. He used to enjoy the quiet company of his CB radio during long drives, until one night in the Arizona desert, he heard something that changed everything. It was early October 2012. I was driving solo through the Arizona desert, heading west toward Kingman. Nothing but miles of empty road, sand, and cactus. I had the windows cracked open and my CB radio tuned in, just in case anyone else was out there. Most of the time, it's just white noise. But that night, I got a transmission I'll never forget. A woman's voice. Software crackly.
"Help me."
I sat up straight, trying to make sure I actually heard it. A few seconds later,
"Please, help."
it was faint, but definitely there. No call sign, no location, just that whispering voice. I keyed up and responded, "This is Rig 42 on Interstate 40 West. Come again? What's your location?" Silence. Then, "He's coming. He knows you can hear me." I felt a chill run down my spine, and then headlights, out of nowhere, a pair of them, maybe 20 feet behind me, blinding, way too close. I tapped the brakes, no reaction. I sped up. They stayed right behind me, then gone. Like someone killed the lights instantly. No passing, no taillights, nothing. I pulled into a gas station a half hour later and told another trucker what happened. He got real quiet and said, "You ain't the first." Some folks say they hear that same voice every year around this time, always on the same stretch, always a woman, and always before someone sees lights that shouldn't be there. I haven't turned on my CB radio since, not once. This story was sent in by a trucker named Lance, who had an unsettling encounter one snowy night in Idaho. It started with a simple sound and ended with something he still can't explain. It was late November. I was hauling lumber across the Northwest. I pulled off at a remote rest stop just outside Pocatello, Idaho. Snow was falling hard. I parked, shut off the engine, and climbed into my sleeper cab. It was just after 3 a.m. when I woke up to a sound. At first I thought it was snow or sleet, but it was too steady, too precise. It was coming from the driver's side window. I slowly sat up, didn't turn on the lights, just peeked out. Nothing. I listened. Still there, still steady. I flipped on the interior light. Instantly, the sound stopped. I leaned over and looked out again. Nothing but snow, no prints, no shadow. I was about to lie back down when I heard something else. Creaking, like pressure on the trailer, like someone was walking on it. I grabbed my flashlight and coat, opened the door. The snow was thick, maybe 4 inches, and there, circling my truck, were footprints, just one set. But what messed me up? They were in a perfect circle around my rig. No trail leading in, no trail leading out, just circles. In the morning, I noticed something scratched into my door, deep, like it had been carved with metal. 4 words. Next time, answer me. I don't park at unlit rest stops anymore. I'll drive until dawn if I have to, because whatever that was, it wasn't looking for rest. This final story comes from a man named Danny, a former military transport driver who occasionally took classified jobs. But one of them, he wishes he'd never accepted. I used to run special cargo contracts, stuff most truckers wouldn't touch. Government gigs, no questions asked. One day I got a call. They offered triple pay. All I had to do was pick up a sealed trailer, drive it across 3 states, and drop it at an underground facility in Nevada. No paperwork, no contact, just a time and coordinates. When I got there, 2 guys in hazmat suits rolled the container in. Didn't say a word. Before I left, one of them said, "Keep the back locked, no stops, no matter what." I asked what was inside. He just looked at me and said, "You don't want to know." Halfway through the route, I heard a bang, then another. It was coming from inside the trailer, like something was moving. I radioed dispatch, dead silence, no response. Then the banging stopped. But that wasn't the worst part. That night, while I was parked in a secured lot to sleep, I heard breathing. Inside my cab, not outside, not in the trailer, inside, like something was in there with me. At the final location, they had armed guards waiting. The place was underground, no signs, no names. They scanned the trailer, and one of them said, "It's awake." They took my dash cam, wiped my GPS, paid me in cash. I never took another job like that. Sometimes I wonder what I actually delivered that night, and why it felt like it was watching me. This story was shared by a driver named Caleb, who encountered something near a forgotten stretch of highway in West Texas. That's not supposed to exist anymore. I was hauling a shipment of auto parts from El Paso to Abilene. The usual route was shut down because of flooding, so my GPS rerouted me through a lesser used road, Highway 90. That's where I saw it. A rusted sign half covered in brush. Mile marker 237. But there were no lights, no other cars, just black road and desert. Then, my headlights caught something. A man, standing on the yellow line, middle of nowhere, wearing a mechanic's uniform. He wasn't moving, just staring at my truck like he was waiting for me. I laid on the horn, didn't flinch. At the last second, I swerved to avoid him, checked my mirror, no one there. Shaken, I pulled off at the next gas station and told the old guy behind the counter. When I said mile marker 237, his face dropped. "You must have taken the old road. That section was shut down in '89. Flood washed away a whole tow crew. One guy was never found." I checked my dash cam later. The footage corrupted, right at that moment. But I still remember his face, grease-stained, eyes empty, like he was still waiting for someone to take him home. This next story happened at a remote rest area in Arkansas. A trucker named Steve made the mistake of opening the wrong door. It was around 3:45 a.m. I had a long haul from Memphis to Little Rock, so I pulled off to stretch and used the restroom. The place was dimly lit, no one else in sight, but inside the men's room I heard something strange. A knock, coming from one of the stalls. The stall door was closed, feet facing the wall. I waited. Knock, knock, knock. Soft, rhythmic. I said, "You good in there, man?" No answer, just another knock. I walked to the sink, looked in the mirror. Behind me, the stall door creaked open a few inches. No one inside, no feet, just an empty stall. But the knocking continued. From inside the mirror, I ran out of there, didn't look back, didn't sleep that night. 3 months later, I passed the same rest stop. Only this time, it was boarded up. Spray paint across the walls said, "Don't knock." This story comes from a woman named Valerie who took a solo job one summer in Oregon. She found a pull-off area to nap, but she wasn't alone. I was parked along a scenic overlook. Dense forest on one side, cliff on the other. I'd been driving for 14 hours. I needed a nap. Everything seemed fine. But around 2 a.m., I woke up because something was tapping the passenger mirror. I stayed still, didn't move, just peeked through the curtain. A man, maybe 6 feet tall, wearing a faded green hoodie, face pale, expression blank. He was standing behind a tree, but half his body was showing. He just stared, didn't move, didn't blink. I started the engine, floodlights came on. He was gone, but when I pulled out, I saw him again. This time 40 feet ahead, behind a different tree, still staring. I drove through the night, didn't stop again until I hit California. But sometimes when I pull off near woods, I still feel like someone's watching from behind the trees. And it always feels like him. This story was sent in by a former livestock hauler named Pete. One late delivery in Nebraska left him questioning if everything he hauled was still alive. I was transporting a full load of cattle, scheduled to arrive before dawn at a facility in western Nebraska. Around 1 a.m., I started hearing something strange, sobbing, like a child, muffled. I turned off my radio, listened. It was coming from the trailer. I pulled off the road, checked the trailer. All the cows were calm, lying down, no injuries, no one else in sight. But the crying continued. From underneath the trailer, I crawled underneath with a flashlight. Nothing. But as I backed out, a hand brushed my leg. There was no one there. When I got to the delivery site, the handler looked at me and asked, "You didn't open the trailer, did you?" I shook my head. He whispered, "Good." Last guy who did never stopped hearing it. This final story comes from a guy who drove produce trucks in the Midwest. He parked one night in a gravel lot behind an abandoned motel. Big mistake. It was late, and I was exhausted. Only spot I could find was an old gravel lot behind a boarded-up motel. Figured it was fine. I was about to crash when I saw movement in the mirror. Something crawling, fast, low to the ground, too fast to be a person, too big to be a raccoon. It scurried behind a dumpster, then again across my headlights, slender limbs, grayish skin, no eyes I could see. I locked the doors, shut the curtains, but I heard it scraping against the side of my trailer for the next 3 hours. When I finally opened the door at sunrise, there were no tracks, just long, jagged scratch marks running the full length of my trailer. I never parked behind abandoned buildings again. Whatever that was, it wasn't human, and it wanted in. This story came from a driver named Will. He was hauling on the I-84 near Idaho one foggy night, and ended up driving through something that shouldn't have existed anymore. Fog isn't uncommon in these parts, but that night it was thick, like milk. I could barely see 2 feet ahead. I slowed to 30, hazards on. Couldn't see road signs, couldn't even see the road lines. It was just white. Then I noticed something strange. The mile markers were repeating. First I passed mile 198, then 199, then 198 again, then 199 again. At first I thought I'd made a mistake, but the same twisted, burnt-out car appeared on the side. Twice, 3 times. That's when I realized I was stuck, some kind of loop. I turned off my GPS, didn't help. Then my radio flickered, static. Then a voice, raspy, like whispering underwater. "Turn off your lights." I did, only for a second. The fog disappeared instantly, and on both sides of the road, I saw them, dozens of people, standing perfectly still, facing my truck. I floored it, didn't look back. When I finally broke through, it was mile 206. Clear sky, dry road. I checked my dash cam later. Just white static during that stretch. No markers, no people, just fog. Truckers are warned never to pick up hitchhikers, but this guy, Ryan, he didn't just break that rule. He picked up someone who already knew his name. It was mid-September. Cold snap had just hit Minnesota. I saw a man walking down the side of the highway wearing nothing but jeans and a flannel. No bag, no shoes, just walking. Against my better judgment, I stopped. He looked about 40, pale, but his face was calm. He climbed into the passenger side and didn't say much. Then he turned to me and said, "Ryan, you shouldn't have come this way." I froze. I hadn't told him my name. "Have we met?" I asked. He didn't answer, just looked ahead. Then he said something that chilled me. "You remember the bridge? Died at the Nangu?" I did. My brother died in a crash off a frozen bridge that winter. Only family knew the details. This guy described the bridge, the way the guardrail was broken, the song that was playing on the radio. It was my truck that pulled his body out. When I looked over again, he was gone. Door never opened, seatbelt still buckled, but the inside of the passenger window was fogged up with the words, "Thanks for stopping." There's a tunnel near Butte, Montana. Locals call it Tunnel 6. It's supposed to be decommissioned, but one trucker found himself inside after taking the wrong turn. I was delivering late, took a mountain detour to avoid a wreck, wound up on a narrow road lined with pine trees. Then I saw a tunnel, unlit brick walls, no signage. My GPS glitched, but I figured, what the hell, I've driven worse. So I entered. About halfway through, I realized it wasn't empty. My high beams caught something on the walls, scratch marks, deep grooves all along the inside, and clawed handprints, like something had tried to climb out. Then I heard it, a thump on the roof, then another, then a low dragging sound across the trailer roof, like nails, long ones. I accelerated, tunnel exit in sight, but then the engine cut out. Complete power loss, radio, lights, steering. The dragging stopped. For 1 second, then a scream from the sleeper cab. I never looked back, just coasted out of that tunnel. When the engine restarted, there were handprints on the inside of the rear window, burned into the glass.